All right, so get ready because today we are diving into some pretty strange reports about unidentified drones
Yeah.
that have been spotted swarming over the U.S. East Coast.
Uh-huh.
Like, think New Jersey, New York, Maryland, they're popping up all
Stuff
over.
seems like everywhere, right?
Yeah, and we've got a bunch of articles talking about it from Times Now to the Kiev Independent.
Right.
Even the Mirror's talking about it. And here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
One source is actually pointing to a connection with a missing nuclear warhead.
Wow. Okay, so right away, what really jumps out at me is the silence from, like, the authorities.
Right.
Times Now is reporting that the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI are saying there's no evidence of a threat,
Uh-huh.
but they're also not really explaining what these drones are.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're acknowledging that something's out there,
Yeah.
but the what and the why are still totally up in the air.
Right.
And then you've got President-elect Trump's take on the whole situation.
Oh, yeah. What did he say?
Shoot them down.
Oh, wow.
Talk about adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah, that definitely, like, throws a wrench in the no-threat narrative, doesn't it?
Totally.
You've got official agencies kind of downplaying the danger
Yeah.
while the incoming president is, like, ready to take them out.
Yeah,
It's definitely a discrepancy that I think is going to get people talking,
for sure.
and maybe even a little worried.
Absolutely. And then the Mirror article kind of throws another curveball in.
Okay.
They bring in this guy, John Ferguson,
Okay.
who's like a veteran drone tech expert,
Uh-huh.
worked with the U.S. military.
Okay.
And he's actually claiming that these drones are part of a secret government search for this missing nuke.
Interesting. So what makes Ferguson's claims stand out, I think, is his background.
Right.
We're not talking about just like some random person here.
Yeah.
This is someone who really knows the ins and outs of military drone technology.
Right.
He understands what these things can do and can't do.
Okay, but hold on a sec.
Yeah.
Why would the government use drones to, like, hunt for a nuke? Wouldn't that be kind of like the most obvious way to do it?
Yeah.
I mean, people are spotting these things everywhere.
Well, that's where the tech gets really interesting.
Okay.
Ferguson explains that these drones could be equipped with specialized sensors.
Okay.
So think thermal cameras for night vision,
Uh-huh.
and even sniffers that can detect radiation.
Wow.
It'd be perfect for a stealthy search, especially like under cover of darkness.
So they're like flying Geiger counters.
Exactly. Imagine trying to search for a tiny radioactive needle in a massive haystack.
Right.
Drones with these sensors could cover vast areas discreetly and efficiently without raising too much suspicion.
Wow.
And Ferguson even adds in this anecdote about a previous drone mystery along the I-70 corridor,
Really?
where drones were apparently searching for something across multiple states. So he seems to be suggesting that this East Coast situation could be similar.
Okay, now I'm really hooked. Tell me more about this whole missing nuke situation.
Okay.
What did Ferguson have to say about that?
So he ties it back to Reagan's nuclear disarmament program in the 80s.
Okay.
Apparently, over 80 Ukrainian warheads went missing during that time,
Okay.
and their whereabouts are still unknown.
80 missing nukes. That's a whole different level of alarming.
It's definitely a chilling thought, and here's where the Kiev Independent article kind of adds another layer.
Okay.
They report that Russia's been using drones to spy on nuclear sites,
Really?
potentially trying to, like, scope out weaknesses.
Uh-huh.
So, the possibility of one of these missing warheads ending up in the wrong hands is a very real concern.
Okay, so we've got unexplained drone activity, a possible connection to missing nukes,
Right.
and a government response that's just raising more questions than answers. This is getting pretty intense. What else did these articles uncover?
Well, the Mirror article floats this idea of a mothership,
What?
basically a larger vessel that's releasing these drones off the coast.
Oh, wow.
But Ferguson debunks that pretty quickly.
Really? Why is that?
Well, think about it like a car's gas tank, right? These drones have a limited range.
Uh-huh.
And Ferguson's arguing they simply couldn't be launched from miles offshore and still have enough power to fly inland and do like a search.
That makes sense.
So he's pointing to a more localized launch point,
Okay.
which begs the question, where exactly are they coming from?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. It's good to know that at least some of these wilder theories are being, like, challenged with real-world logic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Critical thinking is crucial in a situation like this.
Yeah.
We need to carefully evaluate the information and not jump to conclusions based on speculation.
Right. So what about those reports of drones being seen over military bases in the UK?
Yeah.
The Kiev Independent piece mentioned something about that. Could there be a connection to the sightings over here?
That's a really intriguing point.
Yeah.
The article mentions sightings over RAF bases that are used by the U.S. Air Force.
Okay.
some of which have ties to nuclear weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And they quote an expert, Nick Pope, a former UFO investigator, who suggests these drones could be linked to Russia or China.
Hold on. Did you just say UFO investigator?
Yep. He was actually tasked with investigating unusual aerial phenomena for the UK Ministry of Defense.
That's wild. So he's saying these drone sightings could be part of a much bigger international espionage thing.
He doesn't rule it out, especially with tensions being high because of the conflict in Ukraine.
Right.
But he also acknowledges that there could be more like mundane explanations,
Okay.
like hobbyists or even misidentified objects.
Okay, so we've got missing nukes, possible government cover-ups, international espionage, maybe even some rogue drone enthusiasts thrown in for good measure. This is shaping up to be a real-life thriller.
It certainly has all the elements of one,
Yeah.
but I think the key takeaway here is that we're still in the information gathering phase.
Right.
There are a lot of unanswered questions,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to be careful about jumping to definitive conclusions until we have more concrete evidence.
Right. It's tough not to get caught up in all the speculation, though, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a strange situation.
Yeah.
And I think that sense of unease is understandable,
For sure.
given the potential implications of what we're dealing with.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah.
What are the key takeaways from all of this?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that we have a confirmed phenomenon, these drone sightings.
Right.
That lacks a clear explanation. We have a plausible but unconfirmed link to missing nuclear weapons.
Uh-huh.
And we have a government response that, at least to some, seems evasive
Right.
and perhaps even contradictory.
Yeah, it's like they're acknowledging that something is happening, but not really telling us what it is
Right.
or why we should or shouldn't be concerned.
Yeah,
It's all very unsettling.
I agree. And that uncertainty, combined with the potential gravity of the situation, is what makes this such a compelling
Yeah.
and, frankly, unnerving story.
Absolutely. This has been one of the most intriguing deep dives we've done yet. I'm definitely going to be following this story closely to see what happens.
I think we all will be. This is one of those stories that has the potential to really shake things up, depending on what information comes to light.
Okay, listeners, it's time to put on your detective hats. What do you think is going on here? Are these drones harmless, part of a cover-up, or something even weirder? Let us know your theories.
And while you're pondering that, here's a final thought-provoking question. If Ferguson is right, and the government is secretly searching for a lost nuke, what are the implications if they don't find it? Just something to keep you up at night.
Yeah, it's a question that really gets to the heart of the danger these missing warheads represent.
Right.
I mean, if one is out there and it's unaccounted for, the possibility of it falling into the wrong hands,
Right.
that's a chilling thought.
Yeah, it really is. It's like a ticking time bomb, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it makes you think about like the security measures back then.
Right.
If these warheads went missing decades ago,
Yeah.
what kind of tracking systems did they even have?
Right.
How can we be sure something like this couldn't happen again?
Those are excellent questions, and I'm sure they're at the forefront of everyone's minds in this investigation.
This whole incident really underscores how important it is to have like really robust security protocols,
Right.
especially when you're dealing with materials that pose such a significant threat.
It also makes you think about the level of transparency we can expect from the government
Right.
in a situation like this.
Yeah.
If they're secretly searching for a lost nuke,
Uh-huh.
are they ever going to come out and say it?
Right.
Or will they just keep it under wraps to avoid public panic?
That's the dilemma, isn't it?
Yeah.
On one hand, you've got national security to consider
Right.
and, the potential for mass hysteria if this news really gets out.
Right.
But on the other hand, the public has a right to know about potential threats to their safety.
Right.
It's a tough balancing act,
For sure.
and it's one that governments face all the time.
Speaking of balancing acts, you mentioned earlier that not all of these theories are created equal.
Right.
Can you give me an example of one that maybe doesn't hold up under scrutiny?
Let's go back to that mothership theory. While it might sound exciting,
Uh-huh.
like something out of a sci-fi movie,
Right.
Ferguson's explanation about the drone range makes it pretty implausible.
Right. We talked about the limited gas tank on these things.
Exactly. He's basically saying that these drones wouldn't have the power or the endurance
Uh-huh.
to be launched from a ship miles out at sea
Right.
and then fly inland for any significant distance.
Okay, so we can probably file that one unlikely.
Yeah.
But what about those other reports of drones being seen around military bases?
Yeah.
Could that be connected to these sightings over here on the East Coast?
It's definitely possible, especially if we consider the possibility of international actors being involved.
Right.
The Kiev Independent article links those sightings to potential Russian or Chinese espionage,
Mm-hmm.
which raises the question of whether these activities could be coordinated or related in some way.
Okay, so now we're back in spy thriller territory.
Yeah.
But let's try to break this down a bit. We've got two sets of drone sightings, one over the East Coast, possibly linked to a missing nuke,
Right.
and another near UK military bases, potentially tied to foreign espionage.
Yeah.
Is there anything else in these articles that could help us connect the dots?
Well, both the Times Now and the Mirror articles mention the timing of these sightings.
Okay.
They're happening in December,
Mm-hmm.
just weeks before President-elect Trump takes office.
Interesting. So could there be a political angle to all of this? Could someone be trying to stir up trouble or send a message during this transition of power?
It's definitely worth considering. Drones are becoming increasingly important tools in modern warfare and espionage.
Right.
And, their use in this context could be a way of testing boundaries
Okay.
or even signaling capabilities.
It's like a high-stakes game of drone chess.
Yeah.
With nobody knowing who's making the moves.
Exactly. And the lack of clear information from official sources
Hmm.
just adds to the uncertainty and the speculation. Creates a perfect breeding ground for conspiracy theories and public anxiety.
Yeah, well, we've certainly got plenty of both right now.
Right.
But before we go too far down that rabbit hole,
Yeah.
let's try to bring it back to what we know for sure.
Okay.
Based on these articles, what are the most likely scenarios that we're dealing with here?
Okay, so I think we can boil it down to three main possibilities,
Okay.
each with its own set of implications.
Okay, let's hear 'em.
All right, so the first, and perhaps the least dramatic,
Okay.
is that these drone sightings are mostly unrelated
Okay.
and represent a mix of civilian activities,
Uh-huh.
government operations,
Right.
and maybe even some cases of mistaken identity.
So basically a lot of fuss over nothing.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
It's possible that some of these sightings could be explained by hobbyists flying drones at night,
Okay.
maybe unaware of regulations or the attention they're attracting.
Right.
Others could be legitimate government or commercial operations that are being misinterpreted or blown out of proportion.
Okay, that's one possibility. What's the second scenario?
All right, so the second scenario is that at least some of these sightings are part of a covert government operation,
Okay.
potentially tied to the search for that missing nuclear warhead.
Right.
This would align with John Ferguson's claims
Mm-hmm.
and suggest that the authorities are keeping things quiet
Okay.
to prevent public panic.
So it's a trust us, we're handling it
Yeah.
situation,
Yeah.
but without actually telling us what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while that might seem frustrating from the public's perspective,
Right.
it's not entirely unreasonable given how sensitive this situation is.
Right.
Imagine the chaos if the government publicly confirmed
Yeah.
they were searching for a lost nuke on U.S. soil.
Yeah, I can see how that would create a major panic.
Right.
But wouldn't keeping it a secret just fuel conspiracy theories and distrust?
It's a tough call.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Transparency is important,
Uh-huh.
but sometimes in matters of national security,
Yeah.
governments believe that secrecy is necessary to protect the public.
Okay, I get that. So we've got innocent explanations, secret government operations. What's the third scenario?
Okay, so the third and perhaps the most unsettling scenario
Okay.
is that these drone sightings are part of a coordinated effort
Uh-huh.
by a foreign power,
Okay.
potentially Russia or China,
Right.
to gather intelligence,
Okay.
to test defenses,
Right.
or even carry out acts of sabotage.
Wow.
This aligns with the concerns raised by Nick Pope in the Kiev Independent article.
So we're back to the international espionage angle.
Yeah.
And this scenario would obviously have huge implications for global security.
Absolutely. If a foreign power is operating drones freely within U.S. airspace
Right.
or near sensitive military installations in the UK,
Yeah.
it raises serious questions about our ability to detect and defend against these kinds of intrusions.
And it suggests that the stakes in the conflict in Ukraine and the broader geopolitical rivalry between major powers are even higher than we thought.
Exactly. These drone sightings, if they are indeed linked to foreign espionage, could be a sign that the lines between peace and conflict are becoming increasingly blurred.
This is getting pretty heavy.
It is. And it highlights how important it is to stay informed, to ask critical questions,
Right.
and not dismiss potential threats, even if they seem far-fetched at first glance.
Well, you've definitely given us a lot to think about. These drone sightings seem like a symptom of something much bigger.
Yeah.
A world where technology is rapidly changing the face of warfare.
Right.
Espionage, even our everyday lives.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. We're entering an era where drones are becoming increasingly prevalent,
Right.
and we need to be prepared for the challenges and the uncertainties that come with that.
Absolutely. This is a topic we'll definitely be revisiting as more information comes to light.
Yeah, for sure.
In the meantime, listeners, we want to hear from you.
Yes.
Which of these scenarios do you find most compelling?
Right.
And what do you think the future holds for drones and their role in our world?
As always, we encourage you to do your own research,
Yeah.
think critically,
Uh-huh.
and stay engaged with these important issues.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of mysterious drones. We'll be back soon with the final part of this episode. It's interesting, we often talk about drones in the context of like warfare and surveillance and stuff. But these articles also touch on kind of a whole other side of this technology.
Yeah, you're talking about John Ferguson's company.
Yeah.
Saxon Unmanned.
Yeah.
The one that supplies drone tech to the U.S. military.
Exactly. It's like a reminder that drones are a massive industry.
Yeah.
Worth billions of dollars.
Right.
And their applications go way beyond just the battlefield.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We're talking package delivery,
Right.
agriculture, search and rescue. Possibilities seem endless.
Absolutely. Drones have the potential to, like, completely transform so many industries.
Yeah.
And we're only going to see them being used more and more in the years to come.
But with that expansion comes a whole new set of challenges, right? Right. We've got privacy concerns, safety regulations, ethical questions. It's a lot to grapple with.
It really is. It highlights the need for, like, thoughtful regulation and public education to make sure that this technology is used responsibly.
Right.
To the benefit of society.
Well said. This whole deep dive has really opened my eyes to the complexities of the drone world. It's a fascinating and at times unsettling glimpse into the future.
I agree, and it really underscores how important it is to stay informed and engaged with these emerging technologies.
Yeah.
We need to understand both their potential and their risks if we want to shape a future where they're used for good.
So where does all of this leave us? We've got unexplained drones,
Right.
a potential link to missing nukes,
Yeah.
international espionage, and a government response that's shrouded in secrecy.
It's a tangled web, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think what's most striking is the uncertainty that hangs over everything.
Right.
We're dealing with a lot of what-ifs and maybes, and that can be really unsettling, especially when the stakes are so high.
It makes people wonder what's really going on
Right.
and if they're being told the whole truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it highlights the importance of critical thinking and healthy skepticism. We need to evaluate information carefully,
Right.
consider multiple perspectives,
Yeah.
and not be afraid to ask tough questions.
So what are we left to do? Just sit back and watch this drone saga unfold.
Well, I wouldn't say sit back.
Okay.
This is a story that demands our attention, our curiosity, our critical engagement. We need to stay informed, follow the developments, and continue to ask those tough questions.
I think that's a great call to action. This isn't just about drones.
Right.
It's about the changing world around us and how we navigate all these uncertainties that come with it.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping the future by being informed, engaged, and ready to grapple with the complexities of all these new technologies.
This has been a truly fascinating deep dive, and I'm sure our listeners have a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So we'll leave you with this. What do you think is happening? Are these drones harmless part of a cover-up or something even stranger?
Right.
We want to hear your thoughts and theories.
And as you ponder that, remember, the future is unwritten, and it's up to all of us to shape it. Stay curious, stay informed, and keep those drones on your radar.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time for another exploration into the depths of knowledge and discovery.